of Ramadan. So the month of Ramadan is the 9th month in the lunar calendar, and we Muslims are supposed to fast from dawn to sunset. These days it's around, dawn is about 3:20 a.m. and sunset is after 8:50. During this time, we cannot drink anything or eat anything. So we gather together, families and friends usually, and we share a meal. So we usually break our fast with some water or dates, just like the Prophet, peace be upon him, Prophet Muhammad used to break his fast with water and a date, fruit. We do the same, and then we pray, and then we get back and we have the real meal. After that, we just relax after ingesting all of this food, and then prepare for the nightly prayers, which usually takes place in the masjid. So everybody gets dressed and goes to the masjid, where the masjid is actually very crowded, and we start praying. So these days would be around possibly from 11 o'clock at night until all the way till 1 in the morning. And then some of us would even stay from 1 or 1:30 in the morning until dawn in further worship. This time of the year is very special for each Muslim. And for me, it is very special because I love to see people, meet people, talk to people. And I do that with, the people from ICOB, but it is much nicer to talk to people that you haven't seen before or you see very little of. And this is when we get together and iftar with neighbors from neighboring churches and other faith members. So, for example, I think it was last year we had I think we had it in the church, if I remember correctly. So the Bethel United Methodist Church has gracefully been hosting us to pray on Fridays. But I think, yes, last year we had our iftar in the church, and it was really great. And the year before, of course, we had it in ICOB. And the years before as well. So we usually get together, we give a small talk, just like the one I'm given, but more eloquently by other people. Then we speak a little bit about Ramadan, and then we take some questions and answers. Usually people are curious about not only Ramadan and about fasting and the rules of these things, but also about Islam in general. So we usually start with a recitation from the Holy Book. Our Holy Book is the Quran. And because most of us don't speak Arabic, I do, but a lot of us don't speak Arabic. So we follow that with a translation of the meaning of what had been recited. And then we have a small presentation about Ramadan, and then we open it up for question answers. Because of what's going on this year, we're holding the iftar virtual. To compensate for that, we shared with everybody recipes, 3-course meal recipes for soup, orzo beef soup, which is really my favorite soup. It's a meal in itself. It has starches, has protein, it has vegetables, and it tastes really great. And it gets better every day, so you can make a big pot of it, and don't you worry if you have leftovers. There's also a recipe for kofta, which is ground beef. It's just like Eastern hamburgers. And the final recipe is for, I don't know, you can call it crunchy, sweet dumplings. In the Middle East, there's each country has its own word for it, but some countries call it, for example, bites. In Egypt, they call it the judge's bite. And in Palestine, they call it the floaters. It looks like donut holes. So it's basically dough fried in oil and then sprinkled with honey, sugar syrup, or powdered sugar. Those recipes are posted on the website of the Kenmore Bethel Interfaith group. I guarantee you the recipes work, and if they don't work, I'm responsible. You just let me know. I'll send replacements free of charge. So it was one of our interfaith leaders' idea to have the recipes, so possibly we can all have them together ready for the virtual iftar, and then when the time comes, we all eat. And this is another special thing about Ramadan is that, for example, here in the greater Seattle area, you know for sure that everybody is going to start eating and drinking the same exact time. That's something really special. So today's program is going to start with a recitation from our religious leader. We call him Imam, and that is Sheikh Abdurrahman. And Sheikh is like somebody learned in religion. The recitation is going to be followed by the translation of meaning, I think possibly also by Sheikh Abdurrahman. And after that, we have a short but very informative presentation by Brother Ryan Welton, a member of the Islamic Center of Bethel as well. And after that, we can open this for questions and answers from anybody that would like to ask questions. And those questions can be anonymous if you don't want to give your name. And if you would like, also, you can request the answer to be privately sent only to you. Otherwise, we will broadcast the question, or actually we'll read them out loud, and then we'll read the answers. The questions can be directed to any of the panelists, and myself included, Sheikh Abdurrahman and Brother Ryan. With that, I give control to our religious leader, Sheikh Abdurrahman. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings upon all of you on this blessed occasion today that we are gathered virtually for probably the last day of the blessed month of Ramadan. It's been a very different month for all of us, but it's also been truly a blessing, a time to spend with family, a time to reflect and to get closer to God. This month serves as a time of just devotion, personal, sacrifice, and making use of your time spiritually to connect with the divine, but also, in addition to that, helping humanity. It's a month of charity, a month of giving a lot of, being generous and giving a lot of charity. That is the ultimate, purpose of why we fast this, this month, to reflect on our situation in our life. The month of Ramadan serves so many purposes, not just for you as a spiritual relationship with God, but also, like you remember the pain and the hunger that others around the world are going through on a daily basis. That has been also in this time, in this climate that we're in, where there's a pandemic that's happening. Definitely, I think it's been a truly a bliss to be able to do that. So to start us off, first I'm going to read some verses in Arabic, and then I will translate that. um, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون وإذا سألك عبادي عني فإني قريب أجيب دعوة الداع إذا دعان فليستجيبوا لي وليؤمنوا بي لعلهم يرشدون. These are two verses from the second chapter of the Holy Quran, and it's verse 140, 180, 85. So God says, in the month of Ramadan, it is that month in which we revealed the Quran, a guidance for people and clear proofs of guidance and criterion. So whoever sights the new moon of the month, meaning the month of Ramadan, let him fast in it. And whoever is ill or on a journey, then an equal number of other days. Allah intends for you ease and does not intend for you hardship, and wants for you to complete the period of fasting and to glorify God for that which He has guided you. Perhaps you will be grateful. And when my servants ask you, O Muhammad, concerning me, indeed I am near. I respond to the invocation of the supplicant when he calls upon me. So let them respond to me by obedience and believe in me that they may be rightly guided. These are the beautiful, verses that were the first revealed, talking about the month of Ramadan and the first obligation to fast it. And the purpose of Ramadan is not to be a hardship on a believer or a hardship on any individual. Rather, the purpose is so that we can, truly worship and serve God. Even God says that He does not intend hardship for you, but He intends ease for you. And that is the essence and goal of why we fast this blessed month of Ramadan. Today marks the completion of that month. In a few hours, we are about to go into the celebration of the end of Ramadan, which is called the day of Eid, and literally means festival. And the day of Eid, we enjoy the best kinds of food at home. I'm very excited. I'm very hungry right now. So you can well imagine my excitement tonight for all of the sweets that are going to be at the house and all of the delicious, things that I'll get back to routine on. And my morning coffee is going to be back now. I definitely miss my morning coffee. But I think it's that self-sacrifice and the discipline that you learn in the blessed month of Ramadan that you cannot gain from any other moment and experience. And in this, this Ramadan was a complete different Ramadan. There wasn't that communal and gatherings that we had. I mean, literally, we would have gatherings upon gatherings. And I know that many of you remember last year we had at the United Methodist Church in Bothell, we had our Iftar, and we celebrated together a wonderful occasion where we talked about, Ramadan. We broke fast together. Unfortunately, this year, that gathering was not there due to COVID-19. And so were many other aspects of the month of Ramadan. But people so far, from what I've gathered and when I talk to people, everyone has had a wonderful experience enjoying the bliss of this month, being at home. I never had the chance during my previous years to break fast at home. I was always outside every single year. But this year, which was good in a way, I was kept home, and I had a chance to eat with my family every single day, iftar. That I never get during a normal Ramadan. So, and the fact that you get to pray at home together as a family, you have your own cycle and your own schedule at home. So there were a lot of benefits of being home, and there were a lot of, true experiences that I enjoyed from, being at home and worshiping God. And I hope that, habits continue on. But, so I just wanted a chance to really thank all of you. And I, wanted to wish all of you from on behalf of our center also, that it's going to be a festival month. And tomorrow, inshallah, God willing, we will have a goodie bag exchange at the United Methodist Church in Bothell, where we will give goodie bags to all the kids in our community. We invite also your community to come there and be part of that distribution. Our friend David Hisham will share those details and with the rest of the community, and hopefully we'll see all of you there. We'll obviously do it in a safe manner with social distancing. You'll be in your car. It'll be handed to you by someone who is also applying social distancing, and hopefully this way we celebrate while still being safe at the same time. I wanted to give a chance to Ryan to also come on board, and I'll let the host come back and do the hosting, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace to everyone. I'm going to be giving a short presentation explaining Ramadan. So some of you may have heard bits and pieces of this before, so maybe a refresher, but it's always a good reminder to dig in and kind of understand the meaning of this month and some of the logistics around it. So for those who don't know me, I'm Ryan Welton. I work with the Islamic Center of Bothell Interfaith and Outreach Committee. So we do a lot of outreach, education, talking with other groups about Islam. And every year during our Iftar, with the non-Muslim community, we typically would have some kind of presentation or something explaining on Ramadan. And so this is kind of a continuation of that, albeit virtually. Okay, so Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. So for those who aren't familiar with the 5 pillars, it comprises of the following. So we have the testimony of faith, so believing that God is one, and that Muhammad, peace be and blessings be upon him, is his last and final messenger. So that's the critical part of the belief, the core that makes up the creed of a Muslim and kind of the cornerstone of the faith. And then the rest of the 5 pillars are pillars of action, things that you do. So for instance, praying 5 times a day, and then fasting during the month of Ramadan, the obligatory charity, which is 2.5% of your wealth, and making the Hajj or pilgrimage to Mecca once in your lifetime. So the fasting in the month of Ramadan is something that God commanded us, and the Sheikh recited the verses that explain that commandment. And it's something that in the Muslim community developed over time. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was receiving revelation, the conditions of the fasting did change, and eventually it was codified in the way that we have it now, where we fast for a period of 29 or 30 days. So quickly, we'll go through the beliefs of Muslims, because I think this is a good primer on, especially for those who aren't familiar, what Muslims believe. So the first is that believing in God is one. So the supreme, the absolute, the creator of everything, the sovereign, he's the one who we submit to. And we are his creation and he's the creator. And so this is the fundamental building block of a Muslim's faith, is the believing of this oneness of God, which we call Tawheed. The second is believing in the angels. And the angels are creations of God, and they can't disobey him. So they're beings created from light. And the angels are essentially like God's workers. Even though he doesn't need them to do anything, he has the angels as part of his his majesty, his kingdom, and the angels perform many functions. So the angel Gabriel is the angel of revelation who delivers the messages to the prophets. There's angels who carry the wind, the rain, the angels who record our deeds. And so there's tons and tons of angels that God has created, but they are subservient to him and can't disobey him. Then we have the books revealed to the prophets. So there are 5. There's the scrolls of Abraham, the Psalms of David, the Torah of Moses, the Gospel or Injil of Jesus, and the Qur'an that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was given. So peace, blessings be upon them all. The Qur'an is the final revelation, but we do believe in these books that came before. And so these books were given to these communities, and the message was always the same, right? Worshiping God and following the prophets, but sometimes the laws, the conditions, they changed depending on the people and the place, right? So some of the laws that the people of Moses followed were different than what was eventually revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. Some of the things that we can do, in terms of eating and drinking and whatnot. But the message of believing in God and following him and finding salvation in that belief of oneness of God has always been the same, and has been since the beginning of time, since the first prophet Adam, peace be upon him. So that ties into the next one, which is the messengers that God sent. So we believe that God had sent messengers to every community throughout the world, throughout time. So even though the Qur'an is specific in the way that it focuses mostly on the prophets that are found in the Middle East, very similar to many of the prophets that are in the Bible, we do believe that every community throughout time has received prophets. And there's actually a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that was over 140,000 prophets that have been sent throughout time. So we believe that God has sent his message, and every time a people had gone astray before, he would send a new prophet to that community to remind him. And of course, one of the communities is the children of Israel. In the Quran, there's a lot of attention paid to them because they had received many prophets, sometimes even prophets concurrent with one another. And so we believe in all of these prophets, and we don't make distinction between them in terms of saying, oh, this prophet's better than the other one, in making those kinds of comparisons, because it's not amongst the etiquette. We do believe that Muhammad, peace upon him, is the best of creation and he is the final messenger, but we respect all of the prophets, and we believe in all of them. And of course, among them we have Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus. Many of the prophets that you find in the Bible, they're also found in the Quran. So we believe we have this common linkage with the prophetic tradition, especially from the descendants of Abraham, peace be upon him. The Day of Judgment is a core belief. So both the Day of Judgment, where humanity will be gathered and judged, as well as our kind of eternal place, whether it's going to be in paradise if we've received the reward of God, or in hellfire if we've received his anger and punishment. And the last one is God's divine decree. This one's a bit harder to kind of break out, especially in a short tidbit, but essentially nothing happens without the will of God. So in the Quran, not even a leaf falls without him knowing it. And it's something where we have to realize that even though we are given free will as individuals, it's within a set of choices that we're given, right? So God has put us into situations, but we make a choice. Do we do this? Do we do that? And we're judged according to those choices. We aren't judged based on where we're born or our skin color or even what religion we're born into, right? But we're born based upon the opportunities that essentially what we choose from, right? Choices we're given. So we believe that God has dominion and control and has a divine decree, but we are kind of our own agents to make choices. So this is the verse that the Sheikh recited. So I'm not going to read the translation for you, but essentially this is the commandment within the Quran that breaks down the month of Ramadan and what we need to be doing in that month. Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar. So the lunar calendar is different than the solar calendar in that there are 29 or 30 days within the month. So because of that, Ramadan is actually shifting every year. It's about, like 11 or 12 days earlier every year. This year it started in April. Eventually we'll get to a point where we're fasting in the wintertime, and Ramadan is basically like skipping lunch, right? Where you're fasting just, you're eating in the morning, like at, let's say 6 or so, and then you're breaking your fast by, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's shifting. And then of course the extreme of that is when we have it in the summer, when we have 18 plus hour days, and of course you can imagine even in other places in the world where it becomes more extreme, although there are ways of dealing with these kinds of extremes where it gets too much in terms of fasting. People have religious rulings they follow around how much time do they actually fast for. So it's not that if you're in the North Pole, God isn't trying to punish you by fasting 22 and a half hours a day. There are allowances for having a shorter fast by following different time periods, different places around the world. So the core of Ramadan, the core of fasting, is abstaining from food, drink, and intimacy from dawn to sunset. And this includes not having water. So fasting is, colloquially speaking, someone says we're fasting. Medically speaking, that usually means they can have water. So if you were to have a doctor's appointment, they say, oh, you need to fast the day before. Fasting will allow you to have water. But in this case, fasting in the context of Islam, the spiritual fasting, the physical fasting that we practice, we don't have water, food, any kind of drink or intimacy during the daytime. So at night we're allowed these things, and this is what God has allowed us. And then it lasts for 29 or 30 days. It depends on the moon cycle. So again, it could be of different length depending on the moon for that year. So those who need to fast are all of those who have reached puberty and they're healthy, which means that they don't have any chronic terminal medical conditions that would prevent them from fasting. So there are some people who are permanently exempt from physically fasting because they have a condition that won't allow them to fast. Others, they may have conditions that make it more difficult, but they are allowed to, they can. So it just depends on the person and kind of maybe what their doctor has, allowed them to do and what they feel they're able to do. And these people will pay a special expiation, like feeding a poor person for every day they can't fast. Some people, there are some conditions where a person is temporarily unable to fast, whether they're traveling. It could be a woman on her cycle, and so that you're able to make that up later, and there's a process for doing that. So that's again alluded to in the verses that the Sheikh recited, which are in the Quran. And in this month, we're encouraged to do extra good deeds. So this is a blessed month, as the Sheikh mentioned. So this is a month where we're really doubling down on our worship, and the God has put so much blessing within this month that you essentially want to be able to catch all of it, right? And you want to do as much good as you possibly can. That not only includes praying and reading the Quran, but it includes, feeding people, right? Giving charity, volunteering, helping others out, right? Really kind of exemplifying the character of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because he was the most generous in this month. There's a saying that the Prophet Muhammad was the most generous in general, but in the month of Ramadan, he was especially generous. And so he would give money, he would give food. And this was a tradition that's carried on, throughout time since then, is that we were always encouraged to essentially go above and beyond in Ramadan, because it's kind of like that focus period where we're just concentrating on, on serving others by our actions of, feeding the people, poor people, helping others out, and worshiping God through this way. And focusing on worshiping him. And then at the end, we have Eid al-Fitr, which is the celebration after the last day of Ramadan, where usually we gather with friends and family. This year it may be kind of gathering, from our cars or whatnot, or however we tend to celebrate, during these uncertain times. And this is a time of festival, a time of celebration. And we don't fast on this day. It's actually prohibited to fast on this day. We have two Eids. So this Eid al-Fitr is after Ramadan. And then Eid al-Adha, which is the Eid of sacrifice, that occurs after the Hajj, commemorating the sacrifice of Abraham, peace be upon him. Okay, so why fasting? The primary objective is to obtain God consciousness, right? So the primary objective of fasting is to really enhance our spirituality and to come closer to God. In fact, in the Quran, the verses that are actually before the verse of explaining Ramadan, it says, we've ordained fasting on you, just like we've ordained it on the nations before you, so that you may obtain God consciousness. In Arabic, we call it taqwa. So taqwa, God consciousness, coming closer to God and building that relationship and strengthening that relationship. So if you're a person who's maybe drifted away a bit during the rest of the year, maybe you haven't been as focused with your prayers, maybe they haven't been as on time, you have been feeling disconnected a bit from God, Ramadan is that time to re-energize yourself, and if you have been, it's a time to get even closer to God. So really you're shutting out a lot of things that you would normally do, and you're using that time to enhance your spirituality. And so we abstain from physical pleasures during the day, which, if you think about fasting, what it does is it creates that kind of focus, right? So in the beginning, fasting is a little bit difficult in the first few days, right? You're thinking about food, your stomach is churning, you're maybe feeling a little bit lightheaded if you're used to drinking coffee all the time, and you have that cold turkey for 29 or 30 days during the day at least. You're in this, eventually you kind of get this clarity, and it kind of is this sense of focus. And by leaving out all these things that take up our time, preparing food, maybe entertaining ourselves with whatever, and by leaving all that and just saying, you know what, I'm going to dedicate this time to, praying, worshiping God. I'm going to dedicate time to serving others, maybe through volunteering, whatever it is, right? You're coming closer to God at this point, and you're creating that focus where you're elevating yourself spiritually. And Satan is chained up during this month. So the thing is we're always very conscious as Muslims, especially, that Satan is out there, during the rest of the year, he's whispering to us, he's trying to get us to do evil things, really. And he's kind of trying to lead us astray. That's really his charter. That's what he set up, that's what he set out to do. And so he's always trying to mislead us. And during the month of Ramadan, he's locked up. And this is actually a training month. So this is a month where we actually can think of it like, you're practicing, a football team is practicing, right? They're not going to go practice against the opposing team. They're going to go practice amongst themselves to get better, right? So essentially, this is now the time for you to really amp up your worship and to get closer to God. And really, you want to be coming out of Ramadan better than when you went into it. That's really the goal, right? The goal of Ramadan is to build you up spiritually and also physically. I mean, Ramadan is obviously a great, opportunity physically to lose weight, to be healthier, and that's a great side benefit. But really, from a spiritual perspective, from how you interact with others, your behavior, your mannerisms, you really should be, using Ramadan to purify yourself and better yourself as a person. And it's really one of the best things about it, because you can sit there and focus on all the things you may have done wrong during the year, like the way you've interacted with people, and maybe you've wronged people, or maybe you've been harsh, or maybe you have been not spending as much time with your family, or whatever it may be, or maybe just kind of in general, just your behavior towards worshiping God, maybe you haven't been very stringent with it. You can use this time to come out and be a better person. So the Ramadan is also called the month of the Qur'an. So the Qur'an was first revealed during the month of Ramadan. So now the Qur'an didn't come down all at once. It came down in pieces over the course of the Prophet's 23-year mission. But the night when it was first revealed was in the month of Ramadan. And so this is a blessed month where we focus on the Qur'an. So actually, many of the scholars would put away the other texts that they would focus on during the rest of the year, and they would just focus on the Qur'an. And so it's really kind of just this attention to the word of God. And the Qur'an is the literal speech of God. So Allah had sent the Qur'an through the Prophet Gabriel to the angel Gabriel to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And it is essentially God's last revelation to humanity, and it's been perfectly preserved since the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Not only do we have the exact text that was revealed to the Prophet, we have the exact way to recite, and there are variations in how they recite depending on kind of the traditions that are followed, but we have what's called the tajweed, the rules of recitation, that have been preserved. So when you hear the Quran as the Sheikh recited it, this is the way in which the earlier communities and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, recited according to the rules of recitation. And so there's a lot of attention and care paid toward the Quran, and many people memorize it. So from a young age, many kids memorize it, and millions of people around the world have memorized it. And we use this month to read the Quran and focus on it more so than we would have in previous months throughout the year. So many times, many Muslims on their own try to finish the Quran, reading it on their own. And in addition to that, we have these night prayers after the last prayer of the day called Tarawih, where we gather as a community, and the Imam will recite a portion of the Quran. And the goal usually is to finish the whole Quran in those night prayers throughout the 29 or 30 days in the month of Ramadan. And there's a lot of blessing in this, right? There's a lot of blessing to just recite the Quran over and over and over again. And of course, to understand it as well, but to really recite. And you heard the Shaykh recite it. It's a beautiful, it's such a beautiful recitation in the way that, you know, God has communicated his message to humanity. And the way it's been preserved really is miraculous. In fact, every community before the Muslims, before the Prophet Muhammad, they were given miracles, right? So you had Moses, who was able to part the sea with God's permission. You had Jesus, who was able to heal the sick with God's permission, you know, peace be upon them all. But then you had the Prophet Muhammad was given, and he was given miracles similar to that, right? There were miracles like splitting the moon and some other things that happened. But the Quran is a lasting miracle that was given to the Prophet and to the Muslims as a whole, because it is a linguistic miracle. It is something that is, you know, directly from God. It will be preserved throughout time. So really is very special, and we focus a lot on it during this month. And there's a night in the last 10 nights of Ramadan where the Quran was actually revealed. So the revelation actually started, and it's called the Night of Decree. And there's a difference whether it's the same night every year, whether that night changes, differences of opinion on that. But it's found within the last 10 nights. And it is, and the last 10 nights are the most blessed of the month of Ramadan. And if you catch this month, if you're able to do good deeds on this month, reciting, praying, giving in charity, whatever it is, those deeds are multiplied to the point where they are the equivalent of doing it for more than 1,000 months, right? So imagine praying on this night, reading the Quran, giving in charity. It's as if you were doing it for more than 1,000 months. So Ramadan is already a blessed month where everything is multiplied. All the deeds are multiplied. Just imagine now on last 10 nights, they're multiplied even more. And then, you know, in this night, the night of decree called Laylatul Qadr, you know, even more so. God really shows his bounty in terms of how generous he is by showering us all these rewards for those who are able to observe this blessed night within the month. I think that's the last slide that I have. So we'll turn it up. Yeah, I think that's the last one that I have. So we'll turn it over to Sheikh Abdul Rahman.
Okay, it seems the Sheikh might have some technical difficulties. Oh, here he is.
Sorry, I was having a little bit difficulty unmuting and stuff. Jazakallah khair, Brother Ryan, for that wonderful presentation. I think we're taking questions now, right? Correct, Ryan?
I think were you going to talk a little bit about what you wanted to cover? Did you cover that earlier?
Yeah, I covered it earlier, alhamdulillah.
Okay.
Yeah, if any of the participants has a comment, a question, or something they'd like to know, you can either participate by raising your hand and have an audio question, or you can use the chat by sending a question to us, and then we can answer it. We can read the question out loud and answer it as well. If you'd like the question to be anonymous, you can state that, and we'll read it and answer it in that fashion. Has anybody tried the recipes?
Okay, I think someone is asking a question. Christine, I think this is Pastor Christine, she's saying that your sleep schedule is very much affected during Ramadan, which likely affects parenting and children too. So is this homeschooling time during COVID helpful in that way? I think maybe Ryan would be better to talk about that.
My wife handles the homeschooling, so I can't comment on the difficulty. But so we homeschool part-time in general, anyways, outside of Ramadan, outside of COVID-19. So in a way, it's not too much different. But Ramadan brings some challenges, right, in terms of the sleep schedule, like you mentioned, Kristen. So my daughters have started fasting this month for the full month, alhamdulillah. And they wanted to catch the full month, right? And so, staying up for the night prayers, they do go to sleep for a couple hours and they wake up to eat their kind of their early meal, and they go back to sleep. So sometimes they miss the class the next day if they have like an online class. But in general, we try to take it a little bit easy. I mean, I think that not all years allow for us to kind of have this flexibility where you could, maybe take it easier because the kids would have to physically be in school. If they do go to their classes part-time. But yeah, like obviously this situation, I think is just, it's actually made it a bit easier than usual, but in general, it's always kind of an adjustment when Ramadan comes along, right? When it comes to schooling.
Yeah, but there's another question from Pastor Ken about how do you deal with working while fasting? And I guess I can take a crack at that. And maybe Ryan, if you have a different take on it, you can jump in. So for me, before Ramadan, I was working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. After Ramadan, I work from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then some at night. I just have that flexibility because I work for myself. I find that aside from the lack of caffeine let down, sometimes I'm sleepy, sometimes I lose focus. But overall, I actually do have more energy, and I tend to be more productive because I don't have to think about my next meal or my next snack or did I finish my coffee? Do I get more coffee? Is the coffee getting colder? And also less frequent trips to the men's room because there's no intake, there's no output. So overall, I think there's more productivity work-wise during the month of Ramadan. Even though, sadly, in the Middle East, they reduce work hours to give people chance to sleep more. I found that since I came to the States when I was 21, that I actually have more energy being around people. Being in an environment that does not allow more time off to sleep. So that's how I find working during fast to be more productive. Ryan, do you have any addition to that?
Yeah, so for me, my schedule is a little bit flexible in the way that I work. So I tend to start my day a little bit later. Sometimes I'll work a little bit later, but usually because I'm getting more done during the day that, I may not work, as many hours per se as I normally would, but I'm getting just as much done. And I found that, the focus has definitely improved. This month has actually been because of this whole, COVID situation with my work, especially because we enable virtual working essentially for other companies. Our work has been a lot busier this past month than it has been in previous months. But just in general, I find that the time actually flies by pretty quickly. And before you know it, at the end of the day, and then it's time to prepare for getting Iftar ready and everything like that. So different people will handle it differently. I know some people they'll take drastically different schedules during the month, like cancel all morning meetings and whatnot, and just have a very shifted schedule. Others, they may take time off. It just depends. I think it depends on the individual. Everyone finds their own way of working with it. Yeah, you want to jump in anything?
I think no, we did, mashallah, you guys did an amazing job answering that. I want to jump into this other question that one of the audience members asked. He says, are there differences in Ramadan celebration between Shia and Sunni? Um, and also, are you able to chew gum while fasting? The quick answer to the chewing gum, no, you're not allowed to chew. I wish sometimes, but it breaks your fast. Actually, anything of any flavoring that goes down the throat into the stomach breaks the fast. So that's why even like when we brush our teeth in the morning, we make sure that the flavor of the toothpaste doesn't go past our throat, because we believe essentially, even though it doesn't provide anything, it's protecting anything from your fast being broken. And it's more of a jurisprudence kind of angle. It's not really if you do it accidentally or unknowingly, obviously, then your fast is still kept. If you eat forgetfully, obviously your fast is still. If you eat like you get a cup of coffee and you forgot you were fasting that morning, your fast is still there. But it's just if you do it deliberately, knowing that you're fasting, and you go out and eat something or chew a piece of gum, then your fast is gone. Uh, in regards to, is there a difference between the Shia and the Sunni, the way that they celebrate fast? I would say there's very, very little difference in how that the celebration is done. It's very similar that the fasting, in essence, the fasting and the celebration of Ramadan. Um, they fast from morning to evening, from morning, like from the time of before sunrise, at the time of dawn, all the way to sunset. And they avoid the same things that we also avoid. So the differences are very, very small and would have to be unnoticeable even. But in a general sense, no, there's no difference. I think this may be, did you answer this question about how do you deal with work while fasting? Also, right? You answered that question?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I think that's the 3 questions we got from the audience here. Hisham, would you like to say any concluding words?
Well, I thank you. I thank Brother Ryan, and most importantly, we thank our friends. Pastor Christian, also appreciate you guys coming here. We know that the times are not easy, and we just wanted to be with you, albeit virtually, and not to break the tradition, and to continue our relationship as people and children of different faiths, sharing the same objective of living in peace and harmony together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And yeah, I would just like to say, thank you to all of you, K-Big, for always being willing to work with our community and including us. The inclusiveness is very, very much appreciated. And it's going to take time before, that's why we do this kind of programs to educate our neighbors and those around us in our community about what the Muslim community is observing in this month. And I have found that a lot of communities are very accommodating, and sometimes people don't know, and I think that's also kind of our fault. Our fault. I think we should do a better job in educating people and not just assume that others will know. I think that's the key thing, is to have that perception that I'm going to reach out to others and kind of explain to them how I observe, Ramadan, how do I fast, what kind of accommodations I'll need. And I think year after year, I've been seeing more accommodations. I've been seeing more inclusiveness from our neighbors and our allies. And hopefully, in the next coming years, we'll see a huge difference as Muslims continue to extend their outreach and their working efforts with other communities. So thank you for all of you for being here and being great allies and supporters of the Muslims. And we are your supporters also and your allies. And we help one another in doing that which is pleasing to God and that which He loves. And then I hope that you all stay blessed. Thank you so much.